Hi, everyone. Welcome to this presentation introducing EFT. My name is Mary Sue Abernethy, and I've been in practice as a psychotherapist and nutritionist for over 30 years. And I have used many modalities, always learning, searching for modalities that'll help people heal quickly and efficiently, and even heal past events that took place in their life more rapidly. I used EFT, I used EMDR for years, and now I prefer EFT. And I'm making this video so that you and my patients can see this presentation without having to come and see me do it publicly. This is a presentation that I provided for one of the graduate programs, the graduate schools in the county where I live. And so I thought I'd just get it on YouTube so that people could see it and have easy access to it. So I'm just going to go through the presentation, and then there'll be room below for a PDF that is a summary of what this information is about and ways to contact me. So I just will need your email so I can send that information to you. And if you're interested in what I'm presenting and have more questions for me, I'd be happy to create more videos to give you support. That's really what I want to do. So let's get busy with this presentation. I'm going to make myself smaller so that as we progress, I'm out of the way. Okay, so let's see. So what is EFT? It stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and it is a unique form of acupressure. So we're depending on the meridians in the body. If you do not know what meridians are, you can look that up in Google. I would look for pictures of the meridians so that you can see. It looks a lot like wiring going up and down in the body. And I will show you a picture of that a little bit later. But we're actually using acupressure points on the body, like on the hand, on the head, and on the torso, that tap these gateways on the meridians that move energy through the body. It was brought to the public eye by Gary Craig many years ago, who had studied under Roger Callahan. You can research it also on Google or even on YouTube. There's a lot of great videos. I'll give you some links for those as well. And this treatment belongs in a new class. I'll move myself over even more. It's a new class of treatments called energy psychology. And now there are professionals like myself that are licensed and credentialed professionals that are using EFT. And that is what I'd recommend. Not necessarily coaches, but at the very least, you want to work with a therapist that is trauma informed and attachment trauma informed. And possibly even the early developmental trauma. Any of that would be good if you're investigating a therapist to work with. Okay, so let's go back down. So why EFT? Well, the first thing it can do is it can correct negative and overwhelming feelings right away in your body. There is a video, I'll probably do another little brief YouTube video on that, showing this presentation where PETA, or I think it's PETA, Stapleton, a professor at a university in Australia, shows just tapping on the points without even saying anything. She has herself connected to an EEG, and you can see her brain waves calm down into the calm state. So it's a magnificent way to calm yourself down really quickly. There are shortcuts for that as well that I'll be showing later. It's also one of the most effective and efficient yet gentle treatments for healing that I've come across in over 30 years, especially useful for complex trauma or PTSD, but also just for grief, anxiety, overwhelm, procrastination, so many things. Any place basically where you feel stuck or you have strong emotions about it, guess what? It is energy stuck in your body, and you want to move that energy, and you also want to give yourself the ability to have your highest functioning thinking in the frontal lobe of the brain. When we get stimulated with emotions, we're thinking from the very primitive part of our brain, the amygdala, the reptilian part of the brain, or the limbic system. And when we do tapping, it overrides that so that we can access our good, clear thinking. And it doesn't push it down. It allows us to heal. Plus, you can learn to do this on yourself. That's why I love it so much. My patients can do it in between sessions, and it just allows for much more rapid healing. And it's not therapist dependent in that way. You learn how to do it, and you can do it on yourself over time. It doesn't take that long. And it's also free. There are a lot of videos on YouTube, but I caution people, again, like I said, you want to do it initially, I suggest, with a therapist, so that you really learn the specifics of how to use it, because you can feel overwhelmed, or you can be learning techniques that aren't from clinicians that are specifically trained to instruct you on how to do that. Okay. And so there are some movies. Normally in my presentation, I show these movies, but I will have those links below this video. So what is the research showing us about tapping? I can tell you this. I did tapping for over 20 years in my office. I did it, and we didn't have the research to back up why it worked. We just knew it worked, all the professionals that used it. And I was happy to see professional organizations of licensed clinicians, psychologists, and master's level therapists like myself, really rallying around energy psychology and EFT. So the research has shown now, we're so excited because now we have the research. It's evidence-based. There's over 245 clinical trials, and it shows these 6 premises that come out of the research. And by the way, this comes from David Feinstein's work. So it's effective in treating a range of clinical conditions. It can produce rapid results compared to other conventional treatments. And I found that to be true even when compared to EMDR. And if you don't know that term, you can look that up on the internet as well. It also leads to what he calls durable benefits, but I say it lasts. The research is showing when they do checks later that the brain really has been rewired, and it holds. Now they're showing up to 3 years later. So we suspect that it's lifelong. It changes biological markers in the body. I'm going to show you some of that, as well as the patient's report. Oh my gosh, I feel so much better. And you're going to see some examples of that. It is the critical ingredient that produces result. It's not just a placebo or suggestions. It's not affirmations at all. Just a sidebar, that's why I love EFT too. You start with what is negative and alive in you. You don't try to change it. You speak the negative. You're not adding energy to it. You're speaking the negative, so it'll light up the network in your brain where it's stuck and where the trauma is, or the belief, the negative belief. And then the tapping allows you to rewire the brain. So it also sends signals. Well, that's what I said. It sends signals to specific areas of the brain, and with unusual precision. It's just like a target, like a bullseye. So the first 3 premises are about efficiency, speed, and durability, or long-lastingness, if that's a word. And then the other 3 are about physiological effects from the process of using EFT. So here's some examples. I love these bar charts. These came from the mind-heart connection, but also Dr. Stapleton, as I mentioned before. These are even on her Instagram account. So the clinical EFT improves multiple physiological markers. The big one for me is it reduces cortisol, which is a stress hormone. It's actually a stress hormone that disrupts our sleep, and it makes us fat. It's an inflammation hormone. It's actually, when it's in excess, it's a neurotoxin. So for it to change, just a few EFT tapping sessions, to change that down 37% is just remarkable. It also increased the immune markers, meaning your immune system response is better. It's not suppressed by the stress or the beliefs or the trauma. It also decreased pain, the sense of pain, 57%. It reduced anxiety, 40%, depression, 35%, PTSD symptoms, that's post-traumatic stress syndrome or post-traumatic stress disorder, down 32%, sorry. And it decreased, it lowered the resting heart rate, which means your heart rate variability is better and you're less susceptible to stress. It reduced it 8%. It increased happiness, 31%. I'd like more of that myself all the time. And it decreased the blood pressure, 8%, and food cravings, big one, down 74%. That's tremendous, especially if it's lifelong. Hello, it's a great one. And I love using EFT with eating issues, eating and weight and so forth. So the brain changes after EFT, and this was specifically for chronic pain. It was just 24 adults that they studied, a 6-week program, and it was online in a group program. And that is what I'm going to be offering really soon too. It's so great to see this research supporting online teaching and instructing and practicing of EFT being effective. So these are the markers that changed with that study. The pain went down, the somatic symptoms, that means the body symptoms went down 28%, the happiness went up, the pain interference went down, and depression went down, satisfaction with life went up, quality of life went up, anxiety went down, and EFT significantly decreased the activity of areas of pain in the brain, because this was a study in particular looking at pain. Then also this was I thought a cool study, EFT and music to improve anxiety. So they tested just music, EFT and music, and and no treatment, and to see how anxiety was improved. And the most effective, EFT was more effective on anxiety than music, but I think it's a great idea to do it with music. It said EFT and music significantly reduced the state anxiety and a sense of discomfort. So I think that's a great idea. And I'm going to do that in some of the programs I'm going to be sharing. It also, here's another study. This was on addictions. This is so fabulous. So it showed that depression went down 63%, suicidality down 42%, anxiety 65%, which anxiety is so much of what drives our use of substances, whether it's addictive substances or food, which can also be addictive. Our food has been altered so much in many ways, it's addictive. And then also trauma symptoms. So it's healing trauma at the same time, just dealing with addictions. And it also reduced the compensatory eating disorder behavior. So often when you stop using a addictive substance, you switch to food, or you switch to nicotine, which is another substance, or you switch over to food or alcohol. It also reduced binge eating 22%. So this is a beautiful picture. Looks weird, a little bit weird, but I think it's beautiful, because if you look on the left side of the picture, you can see a brain that is stimulated. And I'm pretty sure this study was the one about cravings. So they would take a person, they would either have them smell a food that they just could not resist, that they were binging on or overeating on, or a substance. Then they would put them in a functional MRI, live time MRI, where you can see where the areas of the brain light up from the stimulation of the substance. And then they would take them out and just give them 4 sessions of EFT. And then they put them back in the functional MRI. And this was over a week, I believe. Expose them to the exact same stimulus, put them inside the MRI, and see what happened in the brain. And if you see the diagram on the right, the networks in the brain are no longer triggered. They are no longer lit up. That is why we follow through and do those behaviors we don't want to do. So it's just fabulous to see that just 4 sessions of EFT made this dramatic change in the brain, and that it holds 3 years out. I mean, it's just, this stuff just rocks. So this is a picture of the meridians, and you can see, I think it looks a lot like wiring going up and down the body. They have now actually been able to see this with a special form of photography where they can see it. It almost looks like veins in the body, but they're meridians. So in particular, if you look at the head, there's a lot on the head, and there's a lot going through the hands and the wrist, and there's also some on the side of the body, right here on the torso of the body. So those are the points we use, and like I said, they're gateway points that access these meridians. Okay, let's see what's next. So how does it work? So you use the EFT protocols, and the brain gets 2 opposing signals. First of all, the client is asked to bring to mind a negative thought they're trying to deal with, or anxiety, or a memory, if it's trauma, or food, or addictions. And then the next thing, so they bring it to mind, like this is showing a cat after a mouse. And then EFT protocols, when you do them, the brain gets opposing signals because you're thinking of something that's stimulating and you're tapping and calming the body at the same time. And so the trigger doesn't have as much power. You're not forced to react or act. And so just a number of rounds deactivates the signals. And it can turn off the alarm response. Let me see if I can move the slides this way. I guess not. Okay, we're going to do it that way. So EFT can help rewire the brain, and it's based on the principles of neuroplasticity, that the brain really can change regardless of your age. You know that old story, old dogs can't learn new tricks? Well, guess what? It's not true. And with EFT, you really can be free of those old habits. So we see the old learning is replaced by the new, and we actually get what's called, sorry, this can't go up there like that, but it's called memory reconsolidation. And so what happens in the body, we talked about that before, cortisol markers go down, change, and also now we know it changes gene expression. Like, so some of the genes for particular physiological things that happen in the body, those genes don't express when they normally would. And so we're seeing all sorts of changes, like people that are prone to migraines, not having migraines as much, people that are prone to allergies, not having allergies as much, all the sorts of things that the EFT can change, but it changes, I think it's 72 genes in one of the studies that they did. So I'll show you a slide on that as well. And it does change brainwave patterns so that we calm down and have a better, oh, sorry, I hit the microphone, better heart rate variability. And it does change the brain regions. Yeah, this is the slide. This is actually Peta Stapleton on the left. They're giving a presentation, and she talks about 72 genes were found to be differently expressed. I was searching the research. I wanted to list all the genes, but I think that's a bit too technical. Just know that all of those genes that change were changed in a really positive direction and can spare a lot of pain and suffering. So that is so exciting. So then they also did a great study on online delivery. I mentioned that also, where they just did it for 8 weeks, and they showed that significant reductions in all the measures of the participants had a change. And so the findings say that preliminary support, that online EFT actually will change food cravings, and eventually it changes, and not too far out in the future, it changes body weight because of that. In that particular study. So David Feinstein says EFT is like cheating because we mentally access old learning and beliefs and distress, trauma with language. We use our language to speak of what we're remembering, and tapping on it sends activating signals to the amygdala in the brain, and it turns off the alarm response. So the trigger no longer creates the unwanted reaction. So we stop reacting in the same way, even if it's a trauma that happened to us when we were 5 years old. It's phenomenal. Now the response has been modified by using EFT and it's different from the way the brain forced you to react in the past, you know, how it was predicting an outcome. So it requires memory reconsolidation. And it is a contradictory experience. What I mean by that is your experience with tapping contradicts what you've experienced before. So it does cause the memory of the trauma to be reconsolidated. Let me see if I can give an example. Like if you're mistreated and you're a girl and you're mistreated by a man when you're young, sometimes little girls will say men aren't safe, or I'm not lovable, or I don't deserve love. And that is a belief that stays stuck in that child until they can access it later, if they ever can. And with EFT, we can access that and change the belief that was created from the trauma. And it's the belief that is causing the behavior we don't want. It's actually not the trauma that happened so many years ago. We survived that. We got through that, right? It's the beliefs and the reaction in the brain that has to be healed. And now we know it can be. So what is memory reconsolidation? So it's essentially reactivating a memory, and you don't have to go digging around for this. Usually when you're working with a therapist that knows EFT, the memories will come up. It's very easy. You'll have an experience that's happening to you today. And often my question is, when's the first time you ever remember feeling that way? Anything even remotely like it? And I'll ask people to just close their eyes for a minute because they're safe with me. They have me in the present. They know they're completely safe. And I'll ask them, how old are you in the memory? And they'll just have access to it. And they say, oh, I think I was about 8 years old. And then we can actually heal that traumatic memory. So it goes way back as well as what's happening today. And then we create a mismatch when we're doing the EFT with the memory. And then the memory is revised. Oops, let me see. Okay, there we go. And so there are 4 things required. Often they don't mention it, especially in YouTube videos, but it is good to be hydrated when you do EFT. So if you're watching this and you're planning on tapping, or you're going to tap with some of the videos I create to tap on certain topics, always drink a glass of water before you do it. Also, do your very best to vividly access the memory or negative thought, negative belief system, or feeling. If that feels a bit scary, just remind yourself, and I even say, start tapping on the body right away. Just tap right here, and you can tap very gently on the collarbone area. I'll show you more specifically. It's really just right beneath the collarbone. You can just tap it gently and say, oh yeah, I'm remembering that memory, and right here and now I'm safe. Right here and now I'm completely safe. And you can actually do that all through EFT, even if you're doing it on yourself without a practitioner. But if you feel it might be too triggering, certainly wait and do that work with a practitioner. There'll be tons of other things you can tap on your own. And you get to experience both the old memory, the thought, and the feeling, and then the contrary statement that we use at the same time. And there'll be many statements that will just spontaneously come from yourself after you do a little bit of EFT. It's just amazing to watch. I love when people say things to me like, oh my gosh, I remember feeling that way and behaving that way, but it seems like it's another person. And I realize now, yeah, I don't really want to do that anymore, or I don't want to eat that anymore, or I don't need to do that anymore. So it's an amazing experience. It's really beautiful thing to watch. Plus I get to tap with my clients, and in the EFT world, we talk about borrowing the benefits. So when I do it with my clients, I'm healing myself too at the same time. I'm moving energy. It's an amazing thing. So the point down at the bottom is saying, ask yourself, when have I ever felt like this before? Even in the slightest way. I mentioned that before. I'm trying to go kind of fast to get through this. Okay, so your language is important. It's very important that you say what you're thinking in your mind. So, I direct my clients to use some of the EFTs for just a quick reference when they need some help on the spot, but to always use their language, what their mind is saying. Speak over the tap along EFT and use your language. Okay, and that gives you the really specific aim on the issue. It's a magnificent way to have precision. And so then we can practice together. I'm not going to do that today, but I will create a follow-up video so that we can practice. And there's a summary page, the summary handout that you can get. If you send me, if you click on the link, I'll send it to you. And the back page is a summary where it shows you the points to tap on and so forth. But I'll illustrate it really quickly here. So the basic recipe for EFT is you choose a problem to work on. It can be, an example is, oh, this anxiety. That's what we call kind of global, but be as specific as you can. This anxiety about taking my test, or this anxiety about having a meeting tomorrow with someone I'm in conflict with, or whatever. You rate the negative, and it can also be beliefs. It can be a trauma. You rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, and you write this down. You write down what you're going to work on just in one single sentence. Decide how much it bothers you on a scale of 1 to 10. Then you perform the setup phrase. So you would say, even though, and the setup phrase is always right here on the side of the hand. It's called the side of the hand now. It used to be called the karate chop, but now it's the side of the hand. And so we tap right here, and you can tap with the flat hand. And some people like to tap both of their hands together. Sorry, I'm looking at my picture over there. There you are. So you tap here and you say, even though I have this anxiety about the meeting tomorrow, I deeply and completely accept myself. And you can change that phrase if you're not comfortable with it. Sometimes I say, even though, with my clients, I'll have them say, even though I'm afraid of that meeting tomorrow, because Joe's going to be so mean to me, I am doing the best I can. Then you say this 3 times. So you can change the acceptance phrase, but the idea is to speak the negative in that moment because you're lighting up the network and you say, I accept what it is right now, or I accept me right now. I'm trying to work on this. So you can tap on that point. That's the first setup. And then the next part is, while you're tapping on that point, you state the problem and your acceptance out loud. So here are some other ones, as I mentioned. I'm safe here and now. I'm doing the best I can. I'm tapping on it now, after you say what the problem is. And then these are the points that you tap. This is a little bit blurry. Sorry about that. But so the points are that after you tap this point 3 times, you tap these other points just using a reminder phrase. So it would be the top of the head, this anxiety, the beginning of the eyebrow. So I always say, feel your eyebrow and touch right at the beginning there. And you can do both sides. You can do one side. So you tap at the eyebrow, this anxiety. And then the side of the eye, you can do it with your glasses on, obviously, or not. Right on the side of the eye, it's on the bone, the occipital bone there, under the eye. You say this anxiety, under the eye, this anxiety. And if a thought comes into your mind, say it, because it's a part of the network. Like here, if you said this anxiety, he's always so mean to me, if it came to your mind about a meeting. And then under the nose, right here. Some people like to do it like this or like this, and also it can be one hand. And then on the chin, this anxiety, right on the cleft of the chin, this anxiety, same thing. It can be both hands, can be like this or like that. And then the collarbone. So you find the first time you find your collarbone, you just put your fingers on it and let it drop down. And it'll just drop and catch right there. That is the point. It's the kidney 27 point. By the way, all the meridians are named after major organs. So that's why that's called the kidney 27 point. So you tap right there and say this anxiety. They call it collarbone point. And then under the arm is about 4 inches down from the pit of the arm, right where ladies would have their bra strap. Tap right there. When I work with kids, I like to do it like this because they call it the monkey. And I like it because I like to get both sides, but you don't have to. You can do one side. Often you'll see people tapping in other videos and they have their hand on top of their head and they're tapping the side. Some of my clients have gotten confused, like, why is their hand? They're just resting their hand on the top of their head, but you tap under the arm. And then there's optional points that we're not going to cover. Most of those points aren't even used anymore, but they are optional. And then you breathe deeply. And this is one that several practitioners have used, and I like it a lot. My patients really seem to like it. It just helps sort of close that first little round. So you squeeze the wrist here. There's a lot of meridians running through the wrist here. So you squeeze the wrist and say, right now, I choose peace, and you take a deep breath. And this is where you stop and you check in. Okay, how do I feel about that thing I just tapped on that you wrote down? Is it still a 9? Did it come down? Did it go up? And you write the number and then you do it again. So yeah, these are just examples. Oh, in the second round, you change the wording just a little bit. So you would say, even though I still have some remaining anxiety, I love and accept myself. Even though I still have some remaining anxiety, I'm doing the best I can. Even though I still have some remaining anxiety, I choose to love and accept myself right now. And then this remaining anxiety, and so forth, all the way down. The reason you do that is because, once again, you're being very specific. You're like, go in there after that bit that's left in there, and you're acknowledging, okay, some of it has changed, right? So you tap those points and you measure it all along as you go. And you can also alternate the counter beliefs. Like some people will say, I choose to look for ways to feel better first. Like this is just a different example. We could say, I choose to find ways to not feel anxiety. And then you alternate with positive and negative. Then the second one would be, maybe I'm not strong enough to deal with it. All you're doing is letting both sides sort of your brain, the negative triggered part, have a voice, and that still lights up the network, and you're introducing the positive. I'm choosing, or I intend to start feeling better or whatever. So those are just some examples. I usually don't do that until I have thoroughly tapped just on the negative and I see that it's come down quite a bit. Or if someone's really resisting it and they're going, this is never going to heal. Okay, let's agree with that. Even though I think it'll never heal. You say that, but then also, maybe I can't heal. Maybe it'll never heal. Oh, I choose to think maybe it could heal, you see, as an example. Okay. And then let's see, what is this? Oh, if it's not coming down, and I've done several rounds with people, we'll do this part of the process called the gamut, the 9 gamut procedure. I have no idea where they got that, but the point is it's on the triple warmer meridian on the back of the hand. It's right in between the ring finger and the pinky finger in that gap, but you don't have to be that specific. You can just tap with a flat hand and you can do this gamut procedure. Maybe I'll do a separate video on that explaining why you would use it. Mostly it's used if someone's really getting triggered, or if it's just sticking, it's not coming down. Most often it's because it's connected, most things are, to a long history of doing the same thing. And so that's a great procedure. It can make a huge difference. And so we call it weird looking but powerful, the gamut procedure, because when you're tapping this the whole time, you actually close your eyes, you open your eyes, you hold your head straight, and you look down to your left and roll your eyes around like that. Or you look down to the right and roll your eyes around. And right before you do that, you say, you know, this horrible anxiety I've had my whole life, whatever the issue is. So the network's lit up, but you're doing these movements with your eyes, as you see on the list. And then and sometimes people will look up and down. They'll do that. But then you hum. You're still tapping and you hum. I always just hum happy birthday. Just 1 bar. And then I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I hum again. So what that is doing, a lot like EMDR, is it's stimulating the right and left lobe of the brain while you're tapping. So the right lobe is the creative humming part. The left lobe is the numbers part. And rolling the eyes just stimulates the right and left lobe of the brain. Like if I do this with my right hand, my left brain is stimulated. If I do this with my left hand, my right brain is stimulated. And the same is true with eyes or tapping on different sides of the body. Okay, and so these are, this is going to be in my handout, but I find this fascinating that certain points are actually related to really strongly to certain emotions. We figured out this basic recipe. We used to do many other points. We used to tap on the fingers, and we used to have very specific recipes for every single thing. And through the years, they found, you know what, this basic recipe fixes it. But I find that a lot of my clients like to know about these other points because, let's say, look at the side of the eye. If they say, oh, I know I have rage, well, then I tell them, definitely say rage and tap on the side of the eye there. Oh, this rage, I feel so much rage. Also, it's interesting because sometimes you'll be tapping on a certain point and it will be tender, even if you're tapping lightly. And it could be because it's connected with these emotions that I show on this chart. And then the choices technique is a cool one because I just alternate with 2 phrases. Like, I choose to believe that I can get over this. I love the idea. This is what you use once the trigger has come down. It's down to a 0. It's more of a positive focus. And you're sort of tapping in to light up a new network in the brain, the opposite of what the other network was. So I alternate with, and this is, again, is once you've gotten the distress from the original issue down to 0, then you say, okay, great. I don't have to tap on anything negative. This is where you tap on the setup phrase of what's negative in you. So you just go right to the head and say, I choose to believe that I can heal this situation. I love the idea that I can be free of this forever. I choose to start feeling better. You see some of the examples there. I love the idea of looking for ways to feel better first. Those are just some examples, but you go through the points, excluding this point, just saying what you're imagining your life will be like with this issue resolved. It's a wonderful thing because you're actually sort of opening that network so that can be manifest in your life. Okay, and then so any scientific evidence? Well, I've already showed you a lot of the evidence. There's more than 100 now. There's like 245. So this slide has actually been updated. But these studies are really a big deal. And the meta-analysis looked across a whole bunch of studies, all of them showing very high changes, very significant changes. And so that's just a summary there. And then there's lots of research. I can send you so much research. These are some of them, the DNA research, the fMRI studies, the functional MRI. And so those are great. And I'll send you more if you like. And it's growing. They're doing more and more research. It's so cool. Dr. Peta Stapleton in Australia wanted to do functional MRIs, but she didn't have the machine and they're very expensive. Hospital next door heard about it and the doctor had a functional MRI and he said, hey, let's do the research. And boom, now we've got all this great research. And so these are just some of the studies. And then I have a couple of movies that I'll also link below this video. There's so many. Oh, and these are, this first one is just Brad Yates, and it's 5 minutes long, showing what he does in his little tap-along videos. He's a great guy that I like very much. And then there's this program called Project Light, where they went to Rwanda and worked with an orphanage project where children had been abandoned from the genocide in Rwanda. And these children were severely traumatized, some of them very complex trauma. And the EFT made dramatic changes in their lives. These kids were free and actually spontaneously moved to forgiveness, which was never expected under the brutal conditions that they had to survive. And yet they did. That's what EFT does. It's a beautiful, beautiful documentary. And so I just like this quote: peace is only a thought away, and all we have to do is access it in silence and the voice of our dominating left mind. This actually comes from, I think, Jill Bolt Taylor. She talks about how our left brain is more the ego side of the brain, and that if we silence that, we can experience peace. And EFT does that. And then also this one, question your thinking, and you can change the world. That's Byron Katie, which I really love. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm going to stop my share now and make this. Let's see, how do I do that? Stop share. There we go. Okay. All right. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I don't want to take longer. If you had to pause it and watch it, in pieces, that's great. I just didn't want to talk too fast. So please let me know. Would you please post comments below? And also, again, tell me what you'd like to see videos on using EFT. Right now, I'm going to stay on that topic for a bit, and then I'm going to start sharing a lot of other videos and PDF handouts that I've used for over 30 years in my practice to help people heal. So I wish you well. Thank you. Bye.